Only when the pattern of the use becomes problematic, that's when we call it abuse. They go through several phases, several stages we call it. In fact, we call it cycle of change.
How do substances, especially nicotine and weed, affect teen brains differently from adults?
Because the whole treatment of substance use depends on two aspects. One is the insight and the other one is the motivation.
Hi, I'm Vedika and I'm a 16-year-old student from New Delhi. Substance abuse today is a lot more common than we think, especially amongst teens, and it's not talked about enough openly. So I'm really glad to have this opportunity with Dr. Satish at Sukoon Health to have this conversation where we can understand why substance abuse is happening, what are the risks involved, and how we can help ourselves and our friends. I've got a few questions lined up for him, so let's get right into it. Hi, Dr. Satish. I'm so glad to have you here.
Hi Vedika. First of all, thank you for having me here. Particularly a young person like you coming out and openly talking about these kind of sensitive issues means a lot.
To start with then, sir, for my first question, what exactly is substance abuse and when does trying something cross the line into something harmful?
So you asked me a question about what is substance abuse. Not everyone who uses substances, we call it an abuse, right? Only when the pattern of the use becomes problematic, that's when we call it abuse. But when it starts to have an impact on some of their functioning, it could be their physical health or psychological health or even occupational, that's when we call it a harm or a substance abuse, like you said. The dependency is about when this person starts using it very regularly to get the same effect, we call it tolerance or use despite harm. People will be going through this harm but still continue to use it.
For my second question then, how do substances, especially nicotine and weed, affect teen brains differently from adults?
Let's talk about the brain first. There's a region in the brain called a limbic system, right? It's basically an interconnected areas of different structures of the brain, like amygdala. You may have heard about this terminology. It's called hippocampus. And the prefrontal cortex in the front part of the brain. The main activity of these parts of the brain is to manage our emotions, our memory, and the reward behavior. And this particular area of the brain is actually actively maturing in teens. So when it's actually maturing, substances like tobacco and cannabis can really make long-lasting modifications in these regions of brain. That's number one. And number two, you got to also understand that a teenage and an adolescent age is a transition between a childhood and an adult. So when they're going through this transition, when the personality is formed, they make their own self-identity. And that's when they're very, very vulnerable for these kind of substance users.
So, what should I do if a friend is spiraling, drinking too much, getting high often, but doesn't think that it's a problem?
First thing is not to be judgmental, I would say, because we don't know what the person is going through. So you got to put yourself in that person's shoes. Maybe sit and have a conversation with them, try to understand, what's leading to this kind of use. Be very empathetic, listen carefully, be non-judgmental, like I said. And then one more thing I would like you to understand, and I want all the teens to understand, that when a person gets addicted to a substance, right, they go through several phases, several stages we call it. In fact, we call it cycle of change. I'll explain to you why. When a person is addicted, they got to be in denial, because only when you're in denial it's safe to use, because the reality becomes very painful. And what's the reality? The reality is the substance use will have significant impact on the person's well-being in many, many fronts. In technical terms, we call it a pre-contemplation stage, right? And the person eventually start to contemplate that there could be problems in using the substance, and we call it contemplation stage. Then they reach a stage where they feel enough is enough, have to do something. We call that stage decision stage. Then the next stage is they actually take action, which means they actually stop with or without medical help. Then they reach a stage called maintenance, which means a stage where they don't use any substances at all. Then that particular stage becomes very, very, very tricky. If the person doesn't manage that situation pretty well, what happens? They go back to the pre-contemplation stage because they relapse. So that's the reason we call it cycle of change. Now, since you asked that question about your friends or anybody spiraling down, it's important you to understand what stage they are in, so that you focus on their insight, their motivation, and not to give them advice. Of course, you have to signpost them to a mental health professional to seek help. But the point I'm trying to make is understand yourself, putting yourself in that person's shoes, be empathetic and signpost them while you understand that the person could be going through this cycle of change phases. That's very important for us to understand, because the whole treatment of substance use depends on two aspects. One is the insight and the other one is the motivation. We've got to make sure the person develops insight and develops the motivation to stop it with a sense of ownership.
Thank you so much, sir. That was really helpful. My last question to you then is that if someone watching this is scared that they're stuck in something unhealthy, what's the very first step that they can take?
I think the key thing you mentioned is if the person realizes they are in some kind of unhealthy spiraling and they're scared about it, I think the first thing is to recognize that particular emotion. So when they realize that they're going through these emotions, I think they mindfully need to accept that emotion, and that could be an opportunity. And it's never too late. And moreover, he or she is not the only person. It happens to lots and lots of people. So open up and talk about it.
Thank you so much, sir. Your insights were really helpful, and I'm sure that everyone watching this will be able to understand on how to navigate substance abuse now, be it themselves or for their friends. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Vedika. I really appreciate young people like you coming openly talking about this substance abuse, and it means a lot for the teen and the world. I request all teens to become insightful. If you are stuck in problematic substance use and it's having an impact on your functioning in some ways, it's okay. Just take it as an opportunity, open up the conversation, seek mental health professional help. At Sukoon, we are here always to help any teen who's going through problematic substance and also for their loved ones and families.